Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity Podcast, episode 231. It is the 31st of January today, if you're listening on the day of release or near the day of release. This is coming out on the 31st of January, so the first month of 2025 has already been done. It's already dusted. It's already in the history books. And, how well have you done in this first month of 2025? If you set yourself some New Year's resolutions, if you kind of set yourself some goals, if you tried to make some healthy lifestyle changes, if you tried to implement some habits, have you done okay so far with the first month out the way? That's kind of a rhetorical question because you can't answer me back, I know, but just something to think about. Anyway, before we get started, we're joined by a very special guest today who we're really looking forward to talking to. But I will touch base with my usual co-host, Mr. Peter Lant in Bath in Somerset. How are you doing, Pete?
I'm doing very well. It's a lush day today. Like I said, it's freezing cold in here and it's nice and warm outside. Even though it's not warm, it's cold, but the sun's out, so it's warmer outside than it is inside at the minute for me, which is why I'm dressed like this.
It's freezing in here for me as well. I've got the heater on, but it takes a while to get going. But I've only just recently got back from the gym, so sort of turned the heating on and then cracked on. But no, yeah, first month of the year out the way. So we are joined by a very special guest, Laura Shanks. How are you, Laura?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Yeah, we're looking forward to talking to you. I went to a dinner last night, actually. I mentioned it on the podcast before. It's called The Dinner, and it's once a month, and it's sort of like a business. It's not a networking, it's very informal. But I was sat next to a guy at the dinner, and we got talking, and it turned out that he's recently got into HYROX. So literally, he talked to me about HYROX for the whole the whole meal because like it used to be a few years ago. It was like how do you know someone does CrossFit, or how do you know if someone's a vegan? They've been talking to you for 2 minutes, and they'll soon tell you. So it seems like HYROX is the new CrossFit, because it was lovely. He was a lovely guy, and it was nice, but because as soon as I tell people, oh, I run a gym. And when I say, I do a health podcast as well, and he said, "Oh, I've recently got into HYROX," so it was really good. We had a full conversation, and we will talk about obviously HYROX with you today. But Laura is a member of Unique Results and has been for it's quite a few years now, isn't it? Was it pre-lockdown?
No, it's post-lockdown. So it was May 22 I joined.
May 22. Okay, so coming up towards 3 years. Yeah, it's coming up towards 3 years. Yeah. And I suppose really what I mentioned before we started recording, what's really nice is I'm going to let you tell your story, but you are a kind of a full-time career woman, working mum, and training has become very important to you recently. It may have been very important to you in the past as well. We're going to hear about that today, but I think that this is really nice because sometimes we talk to, like, in a few weeks time we've got Chloe Brennan on, who's like one of the world's strongest women, under 73 kilos. She's really, she's smashing it on social media. She's all over, the world strongman scene and things. But for someone who's got, a couple of children and a career as well outside of fitness, I think these kind of conversations are really relatable and really inspiring and show what is possible with the right kind of commitment and organization and all the rest of it. So I suppose, first of all, Laura, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of maybe how active or not you've been throughout your life, and kind of, how training has been for you. You're now, we just mentioned we just spoke about it a minute ago. You're now 44 years of age. Very importantly, you're not 45 until August, so you're still 44. Yeah, just kind of how your life has been from a physical activity point of view, up to now, really.
Yeah, of course. So I would say in terms of like a fitness background, I'd say I don't really have one. So I guess standard as a child, I tried everything. So I did gymnastics, swimming, tennis. My parents kind of took me to various different clubs, but I was always pretty average at everything. I could do it all, but I never really found anything I was great at. I moved from Chelmsford then to Wales when I was 12. Kind of moved to a school where I think physical activity wasn't something that was really prioritized. And, 12-year-old, 13-year-old girl, you just want to play with your friends. You don't really want to do anything else other than that. So I was in a netball team, the hockey team, but I was always never really one of the kind of the great people in the team. And then I guess probably my first engagement really with fitness was probably in a really negative way. So I think I probably found fitness or exercise in my mid-20s, and that was more focused around how do I control my weight. So it was kind of typical, if you think about that time, Facebook, all of the other things. I think people's, I guess their appearance, etc., was probably becoming far more important to people. And actually, like, I can remember going to gyms, various different gyms, doing loads of those kind of Les Mills classes, loads of body pump, lifting the same weight every week, never getting any better. Going to the supermarket at lunchtime and literally like checking the back of every can to find the can of soup that had the lowest amount of calories in, to then eat that for lunch and then go out drinking in the evening before I'd had any dinner. Just was in a pretty negative place, and it was all around self-image, really, absolutely no structure. Then around, I guess, in my early 30s with a friend, she encouraged me to join a running club. So I joined Springfield Striders in Chelmsford. I did a half marathon, a 10K run. Again,
so you obviously moved back to Chelmsford at some stage, because you moved to you moved to Wales when you were 12. How long were you in Wales for, and then when did you come back?
So I was there until I was 17. So I came back, went back to sixth form here. Actually, I went off to university, started training to become a student nurse, or to become a nurse. I've actually got a form of spina bifida in my lower back, which meant that after 2 years I had to stop doing that because I just physically couldn't take the weight and the strain of being on my feet all day, couldn't lift people. So, you're very much encouraged to kind of get a hoist and to do everything properly. But, if you've got someone in their 80s and they're falling out of bed, that you're not going to do that. And I kind of got to the point every Sunday where I'd be laying on the floor in my living room. My dad would be driving me back to London, and it just wasn't physically fit enough to do the job. So kind of got into work, as I said, went to various Virgins, Nuffields, all sorts of different gyms. Started to try a little bit of running. Running wise, again, didn't really come naturally to me at all. So did a half marathon in, I think, 1:59, which I think is a good time, but it was horrendous and I hated every second of it. Same with my 10K. I did that in an okay time. Can't remember what it was at the time, but didn't really kind of get the bug. I did apply to get a charity place for London Marathon, and then I trained for the marathon again. I had to pull out of that because I just ran. So my training was laser focused on one thing. So it was either weight loss or running, I guess, essentially. And actually get to the point where your body just physically couldn't deal with it because you weren't working on your core, you weren't working on your glutes, you weren't doing any strength training to improve your running, and it just wasn't physically fit enough. I think kind of going on from there, I think the thing that then really made the big difference for me was lockdown. And I think that's probably quite consistent with lots of people obviously had to change the way that they live their lives. So I've always been very career driven, very ambitious. I think the thing I do have going for me is I have a very good work ethic. So I will work incredibly hard on whatever I put my mind to, but I have to love it. And I think that period then I thought, well, what am I going to do? How do I balance the stress of teaching my children at home and working and doing all the things everyone was having to do? So I actually signed up to do the body coach, the Joe Wicks plan.
Yeah.
I think probably one of the best things I've ever done, really for me, because what it did was it created a habit, number one. Number two, it created a positive connection with food, that actually food was fuel for a reason. And I think the two good things about that plan is it really connects those two things. So the things that you eat after exercise are different than the things that you eat before. So it actually starts to teach you around the importance of nutrition. So kind of kept that up for a little bit. Post lockdown, then I was lucky enough to move to jobs, and actually I had some time off, which was the time I then joined Unique Results. And the reason for me for doing that at that point was I just wanted to do it properly. And I remember coming in and sitting with you, James, and doing all of the assessments, etc. And you know, I could probably get up and I could have run 5K there and then. I think, you know, I remember you making me do a 2-minute plank, and I could do a 2-minute plank. I was okay again at everything, but actually my body was just not strong in the right places to get better. And that combined with hitting your 40s, I got diagnosed with underactive thyroid. I started having really kind of early signs of menopause and being tired and low energy and all of those things. I just wanted to change the way that I exercised and I guess do it properly.
And so at that point then, when you the body coach program from Joe Wicks, I know I know a few people who did it you know, a number of years back, but I'm not kind of fully kind of au fait with it. But did that incorporate strength training into it? Was training as well as the nutrition side? So had you started doing, because you said a lot of the time exercise previously, which is quite a common theme. I remember when we had Alex Nicole Bennett on, and when we've had other people on, a lot of women come into exercise from this kind of point of losing weight, getting slim or getting skinny, you know, and just trying to be as slim as possible. And then the training and the food is all around that. But when you moved into the body coach, the Joe Wicks stuff, was that also to do with strength training? Were you doing strength training at home and things in lockdown and stuff like that, or?
A little bit. So the way that program works specifically is it takes you up in 4-week stages. So you kind of like graduate every 4 weeks. So the first 4 weeks is body weight only. Second 4 weeks, you get do some stuff on a chair. The next 4 weeks, you do some get some dumbbells. Albeit obviously in lockdown, you couldn't get a lot of that stuff. So, you know, we were making do with stuff that I had at home and different things like that. But I think the fear for me, which is the reason why I wanted to join the gym, was that because of the I guess the condition I have on my back, I was always very, very wary about lifting heavy weights. Like the thought of doing a deadlift, my God, I never would have done that before I came to Unique Results. Even doing a sit-up or lifting both legs off the ground, I was too scared to do most of those things. So I think it got to a point where I couldn't really progress and I just needed a bit more guidance.
What's interesting is, again, it's kind of like a common theme whereby people see you. I'm sure other members of the gym, lots of them will see you and think you're confident with your training, you're strong, you're fit, you've kind of probably always been that way. You know, it's kind of, you see people and you kind of have that impression. You know, it's like, I know that you've mentioned before, Pete, haven't you, like Lauren Emery, like you know, you just assume that she's always been this kind of committed kind of kettlebell sport kind of machine. And whereby, you know, a few years ago she weighed a lot more, she used to drink a lot more, you know, she wasn't the person that she is today. So it's interesting, Laura, because I think we just do that naturally. I think everybody does that. You see somebody, you think, oh well, she's always been like this, you've been training at this level all your life. But like you say, it's really only in the last few years that because you know that you've become, people do see you as a bit of a machine now. Do you know? It's, so okay, so that's interesting. So what was it then? You think that the Joe Wicks the body coach program was one of the kind of the sort of paradigm shifts, I suppose, around training and nutrition, and made you start to look at those things slightly differently? Yeah,
I think it kind of hurt my interest, really. So therefore getting a bit more support and guidance and doing the right things was one thing, so I could try to get better at it. Obviously, you know, the key focus really, I believe, for anyone should be around, you know, training for longevity, and that's really what we're all doing. But I think I've always, because I'm very competitive, equally I think I wanted to make the shift when I came out of one job into another, was that I wanted to prioritize not just work all the time, but where do I get that balance? And that was something through even all of my feedback and my appraisals at work I was continually getting, is that you need to have better work-life balance. So for me, this was something that I could do for me, something I could get better at, feel achievement about something that isn't career related or isn't child related. So I think starting off with well, let's just get stronger and try not to injure myself, I guess quickly escalated into, right, what can I now throw myself at? What goal can I get, and how can I get better at something? Which I guess is then what came next.
So yeah, what was the first thing? What was your first kind of dipping your toe into the water where you thought, I'm going to train for something? Because again, this is another theme that lots of the guests that we have on kind of say about the importance of having a target or a focus or a goal, whether you're training for a competition, an event, a personal challenge, something that you're working towards, something performance based, I suppose. What was your first kind of thoughts around that?
So I think I probably just proper chucked myself in the deep end, really. So my my boss at the time talked to me about HYROX. So I think my training volume had naturally increased, and I was doing such a mix of things. So I wasn't running, but I was doing, you know, circuits, boxing, obviously PT every week with Russ, strength training, so a bit of everything. And I was probably training, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 sessions a week. I'd say, you know, maybe a couple of double sessions in there, but it was nothing too intense. And it was mostly classes, you know, the social side of that being important, and, you know, the accountability of going at regular times. But it wasn't really anything more than that. He had got through to the World Championships for HYROX in men's doubles. And he was like, I think you'd love it. And I hadn't heard anything about it. Which I think people like that are pretty few and far between now, because obviously it's absolutely exploded now. Hence your, you know, your comment of talking to the guy.
Yeah.
And he was like, I think you'd be really good at it. So I kind of had a look at it and then thought, well, yeah, just chuck myself in the deep end. So I signed up to do a women's solo race as my first race, which was probably on reflection quite silly, and I should have done a doubles first. But it really then gave me that focus. So I think that was in the kind of July, August time. The first race was in Manchester in the January. So
what year was this? Was this 2023?
2024 was when I did my first race. So it was like January. So it was only a year ago.
Yeah.
But I guess, yeah, it was about 4 or 5 months before then that I signed up. So
yeah.
I had then that goal. I think in that time I also did the tactical strength challenge, so I had to have a bit of a break to then suddenly do lots and lots of deadlifting. Get good at that. But yeah, I had 4 or 5 months to start to kind of build up my running and do, you know, more time focusing on the other disciplines. And I guess that's the real challenge with HYROX, is that it's kind of all types of training. So that was the real challenge. That was the first goal I really had.
Yeah. And so, because it has, like you say, it's exploded now. And what's the lady's name, Pete? You remember the HYROX master trainer that we had on? It's gone out of my head. Scottish lady, Claire Rafferty, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So when we had Claire on, we talked about this, the kind of explosion of it. So probably even 18 months ago, it wasn't as big as it is now. So when you signed up for that first one, because I know that now you kind of go all over Europe, don't you? And I was talking to the guy yesterday, because Stuart, his name was, who I was having the dinner with, and he said, oh, it's really hard to get, you know, to get tickets and to get places and whatnot. And I said, oh, and I was talking about you, and I said, oh yeah, because Laura now signs up for them in Europe, because apparently it's a bit easier, isn't it, to get places in some of the other European countries than, I mean, he did the one recently, I think, at Excel in London, or fairly recently, and that's, but you think doing a HYROX in London, like, is one of the most densely populated cities in the world, isn't it? You know, everyone, you know, and it's massive. So you know, you've become a bit of a sort of a HYROX tourist as well, haven't you? So which ones have you done? The first one you did was Manchester, you said.
Yeah, so the first one in Manchester, I guess I tried to set myself just a target there, just getting around it, really. And I went to actually go and watch the one in London beforehand, which on reflection was probably a really bad idea, because all it did was, you know, they can be really overwhelming and really intimidating, and especially then. I don't think, you know, HYROX is brilliant because it's really accessible. I would say 12 months ago it wasn't. That's only really happened in the last 12 months, where the volume and the number of people who sign up, it's very much changed. But then I kind of walked into or it was the men's race. So it's a room full of sweaty men with their tops off, running round, all, you know, proper jacked up, thinking that they were just smashing it. What have I done? Like literally.
That sounds like my living room.
Hated every minute. But it was just, yeah, I just thought, I can't compete with these. What am I doing? So I just kind of had the goal to try and finish it. And I actually did all right. I kind of surprised myself. So I finished the first one in 1:14, which, you know, is like top 10% or so overall. And I just thought, well, actually, no, I'm pretty chuffed with that. So maybe I'll try and do another one. And I think the thing with it is that, you know, your heart rate spikes from the second you start. So you are in a horrible place. So you just want to get it done as quickly as you can, because it just feels so uncomfortable the whole time. But the second you finish, you want to do it again. It's an addiction. It is absolutely an addiction, that feeling. So I did the first one in Manchester. Second one I did in Malaga. So that was last April, of which I came third for my age group then. So I'd gone from my first race to a podium, of which I didn't stay and went home because I was really annoyed that I hadn't improved my time. But I guess
so you went from 1:14 on the first one in Manchester. What was your time in Malaga?
1:14. So I was absolutely fuming with myself that I'd done 3 months worth of training and I hadn't shaved a second off it. But although HYROX is the same format, the race is different, the conditions are different. The number of laps you might run might be different, so they're not all exactly the same. So that pace in that race was enough to give me third place, where it gave me, I think, 13th place in Manchester. So it was quite different. Third one I did was in Birmingham, in September. Again, I managed to improve my time, so it came down to 1:12 in that. But again, Manchester, I think, was huge. It was a 3-day event. It was absolutely massive, like thousands and thousands of people competing. And then most recently, I did Stockholm.
So where did you place in the in what was that one? Sorry, you just said Manchester. So Manchester was first, then Malaga.
Birmingham. So Birmingham, I came 8th in my age group. So I've gone from top 10% and then overall ranking. So it's like top 10, top 5, top 2. And then in Sweden in December, I came second in my age group, but again, kind of top 2% overall. So I think for me, that's the one I kind of want to track as my benchmark, because that's where you're competing against lots of people, lots younger and fitter than you. So actually, how can you compare to your peer group? Also, you know, just striving to be better overall, regardless of your age.
So that's interesting. So Sweden, you came second in your age group, and then but you came top 2% out of all the females who did it. Yeah. Okay. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay.
And hang on, what time did you do in Sweden?
1:09. So
right, because
that
because I'm getting a thing. It's quite funny to see how different people react to different things and what success means to different people, right? And some people think it's like, you know, having kids. Some people think it's having loads of money. Some people think it's having this and that. And it's quite funny because yours was like, well, I got a better podium place, but I didn't better my time, so therefore I wasn't successful. And it's like, well, you know, how do you gauge it? But so you've knocked 4 minutes off, which is a lot in the air, isn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, HYROX is essentially a running race. So if you're going to improve, you have to be a good runner. It's simple as that. I think there's only so fast you can push a sled before you're running with it. You know, you can get heavier, but it's only so fast you can do it. But running is where you really make up your time.
So it's a good job your mate encouraged you to join that running club back in the day then, isn't it?
Well, yes. Yeah.
Well, what's quite interesting though, because you did say you've always been kind of average when you've done stuff before, or never kind of, you know, not kind of been in the top, you know, 5% or 10%, you know, at the top level. So, and like I say, you kind of, we'll talk a little bit about your VO2 max as well, because that was interesting. That's only happened quite recently, where you went to Laura went to My Vital Metrics, who we've had on the podcast a couple of times, in London, and you did a VO2 max test recently, didn't you? But we'll kind of come to that in a bit, because you saying, you know, you've always been pretty average. I mean, but the running, you've really now, so what's happened, do you think? Do you think you're training more seriously now, and you're, you know, like you mentioned food, you know, you're eating, you know, food is fuel, you're far more structured, you're far more methodical, you're taking things far more seriously now, because your running now has got really, really good, and your body shape and the way you look, although you're not training for aesthetics, that's not kind of the goal, has changed drastically over the last, you know, 18 months, I would say. But genetically, you've not changed. Obviously, you're still the same person that you were a few years ago, but you've now kind of, you know, you're starting to rise to the top of these things where you say you're in the top 2%. So yeah, I mean, what do you think? What do you think has changed? Is it belief? I know belief in yourself as well, but lots of things have changed to kind of now make you kind of, I suppose, like an elite athlete at the level of, you know, at the level that you're at, you know what I mean? An elite sort of level of this kind of thing. So what's changed?
I would say structure. It is absolutely structure and priority and consistency. So I would say it's not easy. I've had to sacrifice a lot of other things in my life to do it, but because it's become important to me to do it, it's the thing that brings me joy. So I'm quite happy to do that. I think when I say we'll talk to Russ about it, now it's literally about small increments. It's where can you find that extra 1% that might change and might really help you to bring that time quicker. So I think in times of training, so like an average training week, for instance, for me, which I guess is mostly now focused on my running, would be, I would do say 3 strength sessions a week. I'd do 4 runs a week. Probably at the moment, because you're kind of technically in race season, we'd do probably 2 to 3 conditioning sessions a week. And then I'd do 2 sessions on my bike as well. So all of that, so that's like 13 sessions a week I'm doing, which I have to fit in around everything else. So, you know, I'm often out running in the dark at 5 o'clock in the morning, or on my bike while my kids are playing on the PlayStation, or doing whatever I can to fit it in. But I think having that training and then making sure that the strength training is complementing the running, is that you're not having 2 different workouts in one day that would mean that you couldn't perform in both of them, that you're fueling properly for what you do. So I had a nutritionist helping me for a period to try and switch me from, you know, I went from eating to be skinny to eating lots of protein, learning from you all about the protein, got there, you know, get to my 125 grams a day no matter what. Quite funny, I now actually find it hard to, I overeat on my protein. Probably the only person who's probably ever said that. Like I find it really hard to eat less than about 150 grams a day. And actually what I've had to do is try and switch that. So on my training days, I'm maybe doing a run and like a high intensity workout. I'd eat 3,000 calories on that day. And you think that goes from the girl at the beginning who used to eat a can of vegetable soup that had 50 calories in it, and that would be what she'd eat for most of the day, to now I'm like eating a bagel at 5 o'clock in the morning, to like 80 grams of porridge full of dried fruit and honey and bananas, and a huge lunch with a whole packet of rice. Then I'd have a huge amount of pasta for dinner, and then I'd eat more yogurt again at like 10 o'clock at night, and protein shakes and carb drinks and carb gels. So it's like a full-time job.
I was going to say, it does actually sound, I mean, this is great, because I said, you know, rising to the when I said getting to the elite, I mean, you're not, you know, and you are 44, you know what I mean? So you're not like, you're not a 20-year-old training for the Olympics. You know?
Careful, James.
No,
you're not. Oh, hang on.
No, but what I'm saying is, you're not a 20-year-old training for the Olympics. You know, you've got, like you said, you've got a career, you've got children, you've got lots of other stuff going on. But training on average, like you said, 13 sessions a week. So training on average twice a day. eating, 3,000 calories a day and everything that you're doing. One question I've got to ask, another conversation I had last night. When you go out for your run, what time are the street lights on when you go out in the morning?
Not always, it depends. See, at the moment, because it's winter, and I see on a Saturday morning, I do my long run on a Saturday. So I try to do one long run a week that's like 60 to 90 minutes. I have to leave at like 5 in the morning. So it's
And what time do the street lights come on? They come on at 5 here. I don't know because
I don't know, I've never even noticed.
Because I was chatting to a guy called Paul yesterday, Paul Black, and he goes out for he's a high level kind of triathlete, duathlete, but again, he's like 1 year older than me, so I think he's 47, but he competed for like GB in his age category and stuff like that. And he said to me yesterday, he goes, "Oh, I go out for a run at 5 a.m, but I have to wait because it's dark and it's slippery because obviously it's freezing winter here at the moment and there's ice on the roads and things." He goes, "I get outside my door," he goes, "and I wait until the street lights come on." Because those street lights turn on, I think, at 5. He's in Colchester. And he goes, he waits outside and then the street lights go on and then he starts running. So I just wondered if, I don't know what time they come on in Chelmsford, but it's probably similar. It's probably, you're getting out when the street lights come on, which is amazing. And then what was I going to say? The other thing I was going to ask you, how lean you are now. Most people, again, this is just perception, I think, from the majority of the population of the public, would look at this because. Can I ask how much you weigh? Is that like a rude question to ask?
No, it's fine. 57 kilos.
Yeah, so 57 kilos. Yeah. And how tall are you? 5'9"?
5'8".
5'8". Okay. So 5'8", 57 kilos, really athletic, kind of lean. But you've just kind of quickly highlighted how much you eat in a day to fuel all of your training. And I think that's really important as well, because like you say, people try and take up exercise and probably because like you mentioned at the start, their focus is on losing weight and getting skinny. They reduce their calories down. Whereas you look more athletic and more lean probably now, I'd imagine, than you ever have done, or certainly, and you're probably eating more calories now than you ever have done as well. Is that a fair sort of?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say like it's weird. I think you have this kind of ticking. It feels like as when you have this ticking time bomb of like at some point everything's just going to expand, and that I'm going to eat that and I'm going to put on weight. And obviously, like everyone wants to talk to you about the menopause and things like that and the impacts of all of that. Whereas actually, I think it's about understanding your body, about what you put into it fuels you for what you do. So on a day like on a Sunday, I don't very regularly have a rest day, but if I did have a rest day on a Sunday, I wouldn't eat like that. I'd eat probably 2,200 calories, but only because I'm mindful that I need to wake up in the morning. If I have a day where I only ate 1,500, I wouldn't be effective at 5 o'clock on Monday morning, even if I had a bagel before I went. So it's just regular eating and recognizing that you need to be eating for what you're likely to need.
Yeah.
Right. I've got a couple of questions here. The first one, in fact, I've got 3 questions. The first one is because these will be what people are thinking. So how do you eat enough protein? Because that's, you're eating quite a lot of protein. Definitely a lot of protein compared to what most people would eat, and I would say most women would eat. And then I think that's where people struggle. They're like, how do I eat that much protein, for number one? Number 2 is, do you take any supplements? Because again, that's another thing that people think, oh, you must be on this and that and all of these sorts of things and what have you. And then number 3 is, how is it? So you've mentioned, you've got kids and stuff like that. So the whole sacrifice thing is really interesting, I find, because that's the thing that people don't want to do. They think sacrifice is a horrible word. Like, oh no, it's like you've got to kind of kill something to make something else live, sort of thing. And it's like, well, you said you had to sacrifice some things, but what has that done for you personally, and for you as a mum, and for you as an employee, and your career and your energy and all that? Has it affected it in a positive way or a negative way, or those sorts of things? Because I think there'll be a lot of people listening going, well, yeah, that's all right for you, because again, as James said, they probably think you've done, even though you've said you haven't, they probably think you've done this your whole life. So if you need me to ask them questions again, let me know. But the first one was, how do you eat that much protein?
So protein, what do I eat for protein? So protein, as I say, I find that quite easy. So I have collagen in my coffee in the morning. That's like 10 before I've done anything. I'll just try and put more protein into everything I eat. So when I have people would think their porridge is all about carbs, but I have chia seeds in it, I have nuts in it, I have Greek yogurt in it. I'll sometimes put whey protein in it as well. So quite often I find by the time I've eaten my breakfast, I've had 70 grams of protein before I've really started the day. Then, you know, for lunch, I'll always have tuna or chicken, something with that. You know, things like wraps and stuff have good amounts of protein in them as well. I'll probably have a bowl of yogurt every day. I actually find that because I've now been trying to control my protein, I very rarely drink protein shakes because I don't really need to get it up. But actually, I think without protein, I don't know what I'd eat. So
that's really. So what did you eat? Well, you said what you ate beforehand, like just soup and stuff. Because I find that fascinating because for me as well, like there's protein in like loads of stuff, isn't there?
yeah.
And the problem I've had with when I speak to people about this is they'll be like, "Oh, but the recipe I use says to use this much salmon," and I'm like, "Well, just put more in. It doesn't matter. The recipe says that, but like just put 3 times as much in, and it won't matter." You know.
Yeah, completely agree. Like my favourite, and whether my mum will listen to this or not, when she tells me she has had 2 eggs for breakfast, so she doesn't feel full all day, doesn't feel hungry all day. Thinking, well, 2 eggs, that's not enough. You need 5. It's just like just keep it. Just anything you would do, double it up and just eat more. I think the only thing maybe is like then obviously controlling the fat. So lots of people might love chicken thighs rather than chicken breasts, but if you have 5 chicken thighs, you've also just consumed a huge amount of fat at the same time as well. So it's just picking those kind of like lean protein sources and making sure it's in every meal.
You also sound, from everything you've said, you've eaten there, you're quite tolerant to food, because a lot of people, like a lot of things you've mentioned there, people wouldn't be able to go anywhere near because of, or they might even perceive that they couldn't go anywhere near, but because of like it's grain and gluten and all of this sort of stuff, you know what I mean? But it sounds like, I mean, did you ever
even like dairy, because you've mentioned like yogurts
yeah,
and
you know,
stuff,
I mean, there's
yeah,
but there's always alternatives, right? But it's just in whey protein and all everything you've mentioned there are big red flags for like quite a lot of people, and you're just like, I'll just have them. So have you ever had any problems with that in the past, or like?
Yeah, so I don't eat gluten.
Okay.
I don't eat. I can eat it, but I just can't eat a lot of it. So I'll eat gluten-free wraps, gluten-free bread. Actually had a conversation with a nutritionist on this the other day. I think the issue you sometimes have is that, again, especially being a woman in her mid-40s, you have so much conflicting advice. So, you know, you listen to someone who say you should fast, that you shouldn't do lots of running because it's too much stress on your body, and that, you know, that's not good for your diet, or you shouldn't eat in the morning, or you should be eating for your hormones, or you know, even things like gluten-free foods are often full of bleach and chemicals and everything else. But you've almost got to decide, what's my goal now? And my goal now is I need to eat for performance. I need to make sensible choices and try and eat whole foods, fresh foods when I can. But at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm not going to get up and make myself a steamed bit of salmon and some rice. I'm going to put a gluten-free bagel in a toaster and I'm going to stick honey all over it and get out the door. So you just got to balance those things, I think, and just be aware of what you're eating.
And sometimes I think and this is general, this is not just around food. I know we're talking about food now, but around training, around everything, there is so much, like you say, information out there, especially with Instagram, with Facebook, with YouTube, and you almost have to just pick what you're going to go with and stick with it and shut the rest of the noise out, don't you? Because otherwise, including training, you know, because you'll read one thing and people are saying, oh, you need to be doing 5 sets of lighter weights, and you get someone else saying, it's 3 sets of high reps or low reps, and everyone's you almost just need to, because otherwise you're just going to be jumping from pillar to post every other day. You're going to be changing how you're eating, you're going to be changing how you're training. And like you said, you kind of have to find what's working for you and then stick with it and give it a decent amount of time and just shut the rest of the noise out, because otherwise there's always someone who it's like it's one of the old Peter Kay things, isn't it? When he says you go into work and then someone's always turning up and they're on a new diet, you know, and then everyone at work is like wanting to jump on this new diet. And it's, you just have to find what works for you. And you clearly have, and you've consulted with experts, you know, we'll mention in a minute, we'll talk about you, because I know you've had DEXA scans done, you've had your VO2 max done with My Vital Metrics. You mentioned, you know, you've you know, worked with a nutritionist as well, specifically around your sports nutrition. I think it may have been before we started recording, but you know, you're going to see Chris Branch, osteopath, who we've had on the show, about another issue. So you consult with experts and then you kind of find what works for you. And you stick with it, which is fantastic. So leading on then from all the training, all the nutrition and the stuff you've been doing, what I know you've been up and you've had a DEXA scan a few times, haven't you now, up in
Yeah.
London? And what's the kind of results been like for you on those before we talk about the VO2 max stuff as well?
So I think the first DEXA scan I had was a couple of years ago, and it was a bit of a shock. It was really eye-opening. I think I did it maybe after training at uni results for maybe about 6 months. I think people always think that, you know, you join a gym. Actually, I think I even probably said it, in the 6 weeks I had off work, I'm going to get fit. That's not a thing. You know, it's a change your life. You can always get fitter and stronger. That's never going to just be done. So I remember kind of going and did the scan. I had terrible lean muscle mass. Like literally, it was like you really need to put about at least 1.5 kilos of muscle on. But my visceral fat, all of those other things were really, really low. Albeit I lost a lot of weight when I first started training because it was so new to me and it was just something different. So I probably left about, I think, 9 months in between, had the second one. I think I'd put on 1 kilo, but only put on 0.5 kilo of muscle mass. So again, I was thinking, oh, I couldn't eat any more protein. Oh my God. Maybe that was a bit of time was starting to work against me at the same time. And I guess, you know, sometimes it kind of feels like you're taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back, because, you know, I'm not 20 anymore. It is going to take me a lot longer than a 20-year-old woman to put on muscle at my age than it is then. So I think becoming aware of that, I think that was a good trigger to kind of feel, well, this isn't a short-term thing. Like strength training is really important. Sometimes it wouldn't always be maybe the funnest thing I would want to do, but it's really important for me to do it. So I've not gone back and had one since. I'd quite like to.
So how long ago was the last one then, the second one you had?
Probably about 18 months ago, actually.
I mean, that would be really interesting to see now, wouldn't it? Because you look far more muscular now than you did 18 months ago, you know. So that would be really interesting. And was bone density, that was all okay, was it, for you on both times? They were happy with that?
Happy with that, yeah. I think there was bits around my alignment of my posture and things, and actually that improved between the first one and the second one. So, you know, shoulders back and all of those types of things. But absolutely more I can do on that. I guess hence my appointment later with Chris as well to try that stuff.
Yeah, what's interesting as well, Paul, friend of the show, Paul Field, said to me yesterday, I think he really liked, when we had Daniel Vintilla on a few episodes ago, probably a couple of months ago now, I would imagine. He said, if you want to get strong, he said he gave, and Paul said it's the first time someone had said to him, yeah, or he'd heard someone say, you know, 10 years, you know what I mean? You can get really strong in 10 years, you know, if you commit to it and you consistent with it. And that's a long time for some people, you know. Yeah, go on, Pete.
I put a post up the other day because it was almost 10 years to the day. The first
time you're pressing.
Yeah, I pressed a 32 kilo kettlebell. I was 38 years old, right? And I was well happy with it. It went up relatively easily, but it was a bit of a grind. I wouldn't have been able to do another one. I weighed 65 kilos at the time, right? Which is just a bit more than you are now, right? Which isn't much for a geezer. And so I'm 10 years older, almost 10 years to the day, 48 years old. So I'd seen it come up. So I did 10 presses, 32, each like one left, 10 left, 10 right, other way. And then just put them side by side just to show people, because on that day, I didn't know that this is what I'd look like in 10 years' time. But because of that, and because I carried on doing that and stuck with it for 10 years, that's what I look like, feel like. And, you know, when everyone else is kind of like you said, you know, you get your DEXA scan and they say, oh, there's this. You go back, you've put weight on, but it's not the muscle you wanted. You go, oh, it must be my age. I'll just give up.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not. It's just like you just need to adjust a few things, and it will happen. So that was really interesting for me. And a couple of my guys spoke about it, not about that specifically, but about them doing the same thing, because some of them are coming up to their 50s, some of them are nearly 60. And I was like, forget about being 50, because you're that now. Think about 60 and do the things today that matter for that. And what does it look like in 10 years, right? So when you say Paul Field says he's never heard that before, we say it all the time.
No, but I mean, actually, someone's saying, you know, commit to, you know,
Yeah.
get really strong in 10 years. If it's like we had Paul McElroy on recently, didn't we? You know, it's that perpetual strength. It's like, Laura, you're obviously looking to, I'd imagine. Well, let's touch upon the VO2 max, because this is something as well that you said near the start of the conversation, that you've always been pretty average at doing things. Now, you went and had a VO2 max proper lab test done in London at My Vital Metrics recently. And yeah, what were the results of that?
Again, better than I thought they were going to be. So yeah, I came out, my VO2 max was 58, which I think is good, apparently.
You were off the charts. Don't be so modest. Yeah, don't be so modest. Laura was absolutely off the charts. Like, for someone your age, you were like in the top like 1%, probably more. But even if for someone in their 20s or 30s, you were like off the chart, like VO2 max, weren't you? It was like, right,
Yeah.
you know. So again, do you think that, so because I think you said to me after having that done that you can't go back in time, you know, it's pointless saying I wish I'd done this, but you know, you kind of said, if I wish I'd, you know, kind of got involved in this kind of sport or training or done stuff when I was younger, because you obviously VO2 max, it is massively around training, but it is also kind of hereditary, genetic. There's some kind of, you know, some people, and most people will not have the VO2 max you've had, despite even training really, really hard. I mean, you are obviously, it's to do with weight as well. So, you know, you are extremely fit and you're extremely kind of lean as well, and you're extremely efficient at training and processing oxygen and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, did you how did you feel when they gave you those results?
Yeah, I was shocked, and I think what I wanted to do was really, it was less about, well, how do I compare? So it was less about the competitive part of me, but it was more around understanding my different heart rate zones. So I think, like, you know, I've got my Garmin and I've had Whoops before and all sorts of other things. You have so much tech that is telling you how you feel all of the time, and I think you get to a point where you start to depend on some of that stuff, and actually you ignore the things like your body. Hence, like today, I've been ignoring this injury for months, well, nearly 18 months. I've been ignoring this injury, and I need to get it sorted. Yeah, my Garmin tells me I'm productive, so it must be okay. But actually, what I wanted to do was to make sure I was training at my threshold. So when I was doing my intervals and my tempo runs, I think I've been under training, and I've not been pushing myself as hard as I can push myself. So that's what I wanted to find out, was like, what was that threshold rate? So actually, I make sure that my training's worthwhile and not pointless. Basically, that was the reasoning.
Well, don't think it's pointless. It's that you want to make sure your training's optimal, don't you? You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's certainly not pointless, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Not optimal. Yeah. So, so the sort of the upshot of that then is what's your next, because I think you've got a few HYROXes kind of like lined up this year, haven't you, already? So do you want to give us a little rundown of what and when you've got coming up? Because I know that the first one in the year you've signed up fairly recently is quite close, isn't it?
Yeah, so I've currently signed up to do Toulouse on the 8th of February. However, I think depending on how my appointment goes later, I may make the grown-up decision to not do that. And I guess, like, thinking through all the training, what we've kind of adapted all of my training over the last 18 months has always been about your kind of A race and your B race. this was always going to be a B race because the target was always for me to win the next one. So actually, if that means I'm going to impact that chance, then so I might not do that. So that's a TBC. And then I've got Malaga in March at the moment.
Okay, so Toulouse in February, which is only about a week away. Malaga in March, and then is there another one that you're signed up for yet, or is they the two?
No, that's all I've signed up for at the moment. If they bring out, they did one in London in May last year. So if they release that, then I'll try and get tickets for that as well. But we'll see. But that's still in the women's open category. My goal I set myself this year, and this is ultimate accountability, admitting this now, is I wanted to win my age group. So I've got as close as I can get to without winning it. So yeah, I've essentially got 1 or 2 opportunities now left this year to do that before I then go into the next age category next year. And what I'd like to do then is to go up into the pro category next year. So I've been training with all of the pro weights at the moment, which are the same as the men's open weights. So I've been doing simulations in the gym with those weights, which I'm okay with. I've just not done it in a race environment yet.
So that's really interesting then, that because at the moment as well, you're at the very top end of your current age category, aren't you? So for you to be, placing second in, the way it works is it's kind of 40 to 44, I think, isn't it, is the band, and you're kind of 44. So you're the oldest one of that, or in the one of the older ones of that category. So to be placing second, if you can win there, but then obviously the next year you tick over into 45 and you'll be the youngest in that category, won't you? So then you should have some advantages there, hopefully. But I mean, so do you see this is what I love, the fact that you're later this year you're going to be 45. You've just had the VO2 max test done, you've had your DEXAs done, you've consulted your nutritionist, you see that you're improving still now, and you potentially, I mean, how fast do you, I suppose it's going to be different if you go up into the pro category because all the weights and everything change, but the current category that you've done in 109, I think you said was the fastest you've done so far. I mean, how much quicker do you think you could get? I mean, what do you think potentially you could do time wise in that?
I think I've probably got another 2 or 3 minutes I could shave off of that. So like my running splits within that are probably, I think on average about say 420, maybe up to 430 per kilometre. But say if I do it on a treadmill, I'd easily do that in 4:15. If I would do it in training, I could probably do it in 4. But it's doing that over and over and over. And I think some of it, the mental focus is a big part as well. So whereas it's learning how far you can push yourself, because you don't want to get halfway through and completely burn out. So actually I've kind of felt every time I finished that I could have given 10% more. So actually I got quite anxious before the Stockholm race, I only had about 4 hours sleep beforehand, felt absolutely awful. So I was very happy with the time that I got. So actually working on some of those techniques before the next race to relax a bit, don't get too overwhelmed, and it's not the end of the world. Actually, I just need to kind of maybe go into it with a slightly different mindset, and hopefully I can scrape a bit more out of it.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, because like you said, it's fine margins now, isn't it? It's shaving 5 seconds off here, 10 seconds off there. It's not huge. Yeah. And I'm just going to go back because I know Pete asked 3 questions earlier, and we only answered one of them. So the second question was, do you take any supplements and things like that?
Yeah, I take quite a lot actually. So I take creatine every day without fail. I take, in terms of vitamins, I take omega-3, vitamin D, multivitamin, magnesium. What else do I take? I take my HRT, which is also absolutely important to maintain all of that as well. Plus, obviously, I have to take all my thyroid medication too. So I have a full-on pill pot with days of the week with all sorts of stuff in it. And then pre-race, 2 or 3 days before, I start taking beetroot shots as well.
Yeah.
Which taste horrendous. But I think it expands all your blood vessels and really helps.
I was gonna say that's like for vasodilation, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, so I do that as well. Yeah, that's it at the moment.
Excellent. Okay, and then the third question, which I'm aware of time, we will wrap up. We will wrap up shortly, but I don't know if you can answer. It was the question around sacrifice, wasn't it? That Pete asked about. You mentioned sacrificing stuff, but what do you feel you have sacrificed, and how has that impacted your life? Family
Across the
life.
board.
Across the board. Yeah,
Yeah.
across everything. Yeah.
So I think it's had positives and negatives. So I'd say the things that I've sacrificed the most would probably be the things that have been working against me health-wise before. So, I very rarely drink now, and probably because I don't drink, I probably don't socialize as much as I did. So actually, I've replaced maybe some of those more unhealthy habits with more healthy ones. And when I see friends, it won't be around kind of going out and getting hammered till 3 a.m. It'll be having a nice dinner or a nice catch up instead. I think the balance has been, so I love that my kids see me doing what I do. Actually, if that, and that means, and there has been times where I've dragged Leo, my youngest, often ends up in the gym with me on a Friday night on his tablet, just because I don't have childcare at that point, so I can't, I need to bring him with me. But actually, the fact that they're seeing that, I think it's important. They're both boys, that they see that positive female role models, that you can work and you don't have to sacrifice all the other things in your life. So there may be times that maybe I've done things that has maybe been at the expense of maybe something I could have been doing with them, but obviously all of the clubs, the schooling, everything they do always comes first, and then everything has to fit around that. I think in terms of work, I think it's only been positive. I think it's completely transformed the way that I manage my time, the way that I prioritize things. I think certainly it's also helped when you think people within your teams and stuff, if they can see that this is important to you, you let them also have their time to do things that are important to them as well. Then actually that balance is important, and people just feel more motivated and more happy and just generally more well and healthy. So actually, I think maybe I've said sacrifice, but I don't think I've probably sacrificed anything that wasn't right for me anyway. So it's only been positive, I think, on my life.
That's the answer I was looking for. Thank you very much.
No, that's really interesting. I think I listened to one, Pete, at one of our podcasts recently, and I can't remember if it was one of the Christmas ones or it was one of the ones where you said about you used to meet up with friends or your friends at work. You used to just go out and get drunk with all the time.
Oh yeah.
And then when you kind of you decided you didn't want to just go out and get drunk all the time, so you kind of lost contact with them or saw them less frequently. But like you say, is that a sacrifice? It's a change. I don't think it's like you say. It's not really a sacrifice because you're giving up something that wasn't really serving you anyway, so maybe replacing it with something better. So no, that's great. Oh, thank you so much, Laura. That's been really, really interesting, like talking to you about, obviously about the HYROX stuff, but about everything around it, I think is just as important, probably more so for most people listening, all the stuff around the attitude to exercise, the attitude to food and nutrition, all the benefits from exercise, the benefits from training, the way it makes you feel, the way it helps you structure your life as well. So yeah, really, really fantastic. Now I know you're not really you're not actually a kind of a fitness influencer or you're not a fitness business person, but do you really post a lot of stuff? You're quite a private person, aren't you, really, I think?
Yeah, I don't really. One of my New Year's resolutions was to try and document more stuff, because I think sometimes you look back and actually, it'd be nice to look back in 10 years when I'm maybe not as capable as I am now and look at what I've done.
Honestly, I can recommend it. Like, I mean, it doesn't have to be Facebook or whatever, but that Facebook memory thing, I love it because it just pops things up in front of you and you're like, blimey, that was 10 years ago. Look what's changed. And it's something like, I mean, it doesn't necessarily always work like that, but yeah.
So
and then your The millions of people who have listened to you on this podcast around the world will then follow you. You see.
Yeah, I mean, do you have? So you've got like I think you've got a private account, have you, on Instagram and stuff?
No, I think it's public. I just don't put an awful lot on there.
Oh, okay. What is it? What is it?
Yeah.
If people search Laura Shanks, they'll find it, I presume.
Yeah, it's Laura J Shanks.
Laura J Shanks on Instagram. Perfect. Excellent. No, thank you. That's really, really good. That's really interesting. And again, really nice because the last few weeks we had who do we have? We had Dr. Ryan Wolfhart around the spine, strong spine, active life. We had 2 episodes with Paul McElroy around perpetual strength. We had Nick Rainbird on talking about the Wim Hof method and his training there. And then we've just obviously had you, Laura, on talking about your kind of life and HYROX. So lots of different kind of elements of health and fitness and wellness to kick off 2025. So thank you so much for joining us, Laura.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Right, please do like, share, subscribe, leave a review if you're watching or listening on a platform that allows you to do so, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts, and we'll read out the reviews on air and send out some free merch for you. I know in a couple of weeks we're joined by Chloe Brennan, who is multiple times world's strongest woman in the under 73 or under 74 kilo category. I think it's under 73 kilos. Really interesting lady. She'll be on with us. At the moment, next week, it may be Pete and I having a catch up after a lot of guests on. So we'll see. We may have a guest. We will let you know nearer the time, and we'll see you next. We'll be here next week, regardless. If it's me and Pete or if there's a guest on, we will be here. So thank you very much. That was episode 231. We'll be back next week with episode 232. So until then, bye-bye.